What would you do if the one person you loved most in the world looked you in the eye and told you you were no longer welcome in your own home? Not a stranger, not a business rival, your own daughter. I smiled, I nodded, and I walked away. But when they arrived to take what was mine, my house was ready for them. And the surprise I had waiting was something no one would ever forget. Before we begin this story of betrayal and the most satisfyingly high-tech revenge I've ever pulled off, do me a favor. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been pushed around by someone who thought you were weak, hit that like button. Let's get this video to everyone who needs to see that you should never, ever mess with a quiet man with a plan. And make sure you subscribe and ring that bell, because the stories here are all about justice served cold. The slam of my car door echoed in the pine-scented silence of Lake Tahoe. That sound, solid and final, was the first note of a symphony of peace. I stood there for a moment, my hand on the warm metal, breathing in the crisp mountain air. 3 days, 72 hours of absolute quiet on the shore of the lake, the only medicine I needed after another soul-crushing quarter running my tech firm in San Francisco.
The 3-hour drive was a fading memory, worth every minute to see the sun glinting off the deep blue water of the lake. This cabin wasn't just a building, it was my sanctuary. Every log, every stone, every piece of furniture was chosen by me and my wife, Eleanor. We dreamed of growing old here, of watching the seasons change from the massive deck that overlooked the water. But something was off. A prickle on the back of my neck, a sixth sense you develop after 30 years of reading boardrooms and closing deals. There were 2 figures on my deck, 2 strangers in resort wear, holding steaming mugs of what was undoubtedly my coffee. And then I saw her, my daughter, Chloe. She was leaning against the railing, her auburn hair catching the late afternoon sun. Behind her stood her husband, Brandon. He saw me first, and his shoulders immediately slumped, his eyes darting away like a guilty child. My own briefcase, a beautiful leather thing Eleanor had given me, slipped from my suddenly numb fingers and thudded onto the gravel driveway. "Dad?" Chloe said, straightening up. Her face was a mask I didn't recognize. Cold, impatient. Even during her worst teenage rebellion, she'd never looked at me like this. "What are you doing here?" A laugh, dry and hollow, escaped me. "I'm coming to my cabin, Chloe. What does it look like?"
"You can't stay," she said, and her voice was like shards of glass. It cut deep. "Brandon and I planned a romantic weekend. We need this time alone." I blinked. Sure, I had misheard. The jet lag, the drive. It had to be a mistake. Alone? "Chloe, this is my house. The deed has my name on it. Robert O'Connell. I built this with your mother. We picked out every single thing here together." "I don't care," she said, and she set her mug down on the railing with a sharp, definitive clink. "We got here first. We're not leaving." Brandon mumbled something, a pathetic noise about maybe rescheduling, but Chloe shot him a look that could freeze fire. I took a step forward, my voice calm, the voice I used when a client was being profoundly unreasonable. "Chloe, I just drove 3 hours. I'm tired. I just want to unwind for a couple of days." "Just go, Dad," she snapped, her voice rising to a shout that startled a bird from a nearby tree. "You're always in the way. You're just a complication." Those words, a complication, they hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. This was my refuge, the place I came to feel close to Eleanor after cancer stole her from us 3 years ago. The place where I could still hear her laughter in the whisper of the pines. I stood there, a 62-year-old man, being evicted from his own life by his only child, the little girl who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories, the young woman who had sobbed in my arms at her mother's funeral. I could almost hear Eleanor's voice in my memory. "Rob, be patient with her. She's grieving in her own way. Give her time."
I had given her time. 3 years of it. 3 years of financial support, of emotional leeway, of bending over backwards to accommodate the hurricane of her grief. And this is where it led. "Okay," I heard myself say, my voice strangely flat. "Okay, I'll go." I bent to pick up my briefcase, my knees protesting with a familiar ache. My own daughter was treating me like a door-to-door salesman, a nuisance to be dismissed. "Great," Chloe chirped, her tone instantly light. "Next time, maybe call first?" Call. To get permission to enter my own property. I walked back to my car, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. Each step was a retreat from a battlefield I never knew I was fighting on. I heard her voice behind me, already softened, discussing dinner plans with Brandon as if I had never existed. The engine of my German sedan roared to life, dependable, solid, unlike my family apparently. I reversed out of the driveway, my grip on the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. In the rearview mirror, I saw them settle back into the deck chairs, Chloe raising her mug in what looked like a toast, or a farewell. The drive back to San Francisco was a blur of gray asphalt and a growing cold fury in my chest. I returned to silence. Not a peaceful silence, but the silence of defeat.
For 3 days, I moved through my penthouse like a ghost. I sat in my study, drinking cold coffee, eating alone. Saturday was spent jumping at every phone call, hoping it was her, calling to apologize, to explain it was some terrible mistake. Sunday brought a heavier, darker realization. I had spent my entire life conceding too easily. Then the call came. Chloe's voice was arctic. "Dad, listen carefully. Brandon and I have decided the cabin belongs to his parents now." I almost dropped the phone. "Chloe, what in God's name are you talking about?" "Frank and Linda, it's their house now. Don't come back." I shot up from my leather chair. "Have you lost your mind? You can't just give my property away." "I can and I am," she said, her voice dripping with a sense of entitlement that took my breath away. "You barely use it, and they need a proper place to live. It's selfish of you to hoard it." Selfish. The word burned. I had paid for her Ivy League education, her wedding, the down payment on her overpriced San Francisco condo. "That's what fathers do," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I was struggling to contain. "Besides," she added, her tone shifting to a manipulative dagger, "you're old and you're alone. What do you need such a big house for?"
Old and alone. The words punched a hole right through me. But on the other side of that pain, something else solidified. Something cold and hard and unyielding. Eleanor's voice whispered about patience, but Eleanor never heard her daughter speak to her father this way. "These are Brandon's parents, Chloe, strangers to me." "They're family now," she retorted, "and unlike you, they'll be grateful." I squeezed the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "No!" The silence on the other end was profound. "What did you say?" I said, "No, Chloe, I do not permit this." "You can't refuse me. Mom would be so proud of you," she hissed, her voice switching to a scream. "You're an egotistical, pathetic old man." "Mom would be horrified by what you've become," I replied,
my voice now eerily calm. I ended the call. For the first time in 3 years, I had hung up on my daughter. The phone sat on my knee like a live grenade. My heart hammered in my throat. Outside, the city lights twinkled, life going on as normal. But inside my study, the world had fundamentally changed. She called back immediately. I pressed the power button on the phone, plunging the room into silence. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, replaying every word, every look, every betrayal. The silence in my study was no longer peaceful. It was charged, electric with tension. And then something inside me clicked.
This was no longer about feelings. This was a problem, and problems were what I solved for a living. By Tuesday morning, with the first rays of sun piercing the San Francisco fog, I was a new man. Clarity, sharp and focused, replaced the grief. I drank my coffee, opened my laptop, and began to read California property law with the same cold, methodical precision I used to dismantle competitors. Rule 1. Never negotiate from a position of desperation. Chloe thought I was weak. Then I'd beg for a scrap of her affection. Weak men don't hang up. Weak men don't hire lawyers. Rule 2. Information is power. Chloe was sure she knew everything, that I was a helpless widower desperate to avoid loneliness. She had no idea I was already mobilizing. Rule 3. Time is the ultimate weapon. She was in a panic, needing to move her in-laws in by the weekend. That urgency was her weakness. For me, it was a luxury. 4 days was an eternity when you knew how to use them. I remembered a young, arrogant startup CEO who once tried to steal a patent from my company. He'd spread lies, poached my junior staff, thought he had me cornered. While he was preening, I was quietly acquiring his primary supplier. When his funding fell through, I bought his company for pennies on the dollar. He learned what it meant to be on the wrong side of a calculated move. This was the same. Chloe thought I was cornered. I was just beginning my run-up. A text buzzed through. "Dad, Brandon's parents found a moving truck for Sunday. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be." The audacity was impressive. From a business perspective, it was a solid tactic. Act as if the deal is already done. But I knew that trick. She was about to get a very expensive lesson. I deleted the message. My mind was already building a schematic, just like I did for any new project. Resources, timeline, expected outcome, acceptable risks. Resources. Money was no object. My lawyer, Marcus, was the best, a shark in a tailored suit who had handled my contracts for 15 years. And I had one asset Chloe knew nothing about. My neighbor, Leo. Leo owed me. A few months back, a pipe had burst in his apartment while he was away. I'd coordinated the cleanup, fronted the costs for the emergency plumber, saved his precious cyber farm from drowning. Leo was a genius, a freelance cybersecurity expert and hardware wizard whose apartment looked like a mission control center. And he worked remotely. Timeline? 4 days. The main event? Sunday. The move. The goal wasn't just to stop them, it was to flip the script, to show I wasn't a soft-hearted father, but a man you simply did not cross. I looked at a photo of Eleanor on my desk. She always said I was 95% kind, but that other 5%, Rob, she'd say with a smile, that's pure titanium. Chloe had never seen that 5%, but she was about to. By 2 a.m., I had the framework. Wednesday, enlist Leo. Thursday, finalize with Marcus. Friday and Saturday, preparation. Sunday, showtime. Leo answered his door in a faded T-shirt from some defunct gaming convention, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Mr. O'Connell, everything okay?" "I need your help with a technically interesting project," I said, stepping into his tech layer of monitors and blinking LEDs. "What kind of project?" he asked, instantly intrigued. "A smart home, of a sort. Immersive experience for some uninvited guests." His eyes lit up. "Like a haunted house? A tech-based prank?" "Something like that. A surprise for people who've gotten a little too comfortable." "Oh, this sounds awesome," he grinned. "When do we start?" 2 hours later, we were loading up his SUV with a small fortune in gear, motion sensors, micro cameras, Bluetooth speakers, programmable LEDs, a tablet loaded with control software. On the drive to Tahoe, he chattered excitedly about trigger chains and event-based reactions. "How complex can we make it?" I asked. "As complex as you want. We can add facial recognition if you have a week. Let's start with the basics. Scare the hell out of them."
We reached the cabin by noon. Leo got out, whistled low as he took in the beautiful A-frame structure against the lake. "You live well, Mr. O. You guests are in for a memorable stay." The installation was a marvel to watch. Leo worked with the precision of a surgeon. In a few hours, he had sensors in every room, cameras hidden in smoke detectors, speakers tucked into ceiling corners. He synced it all to the tablet. "Okay, voice test," he said, tapping the screen. A deep, robotic, yet crystal-clear voice boomed from the living room speakers. "Warning, you are trespassing on private property. Leave immediately." "And if they don't," Leo said, his eyes gleaming, "Phase 2. Everything goes to 11. Lights, sound, water, all of it. The system will psychologically overwhelm them." We tested it. I walked into the living room. Lights strobed. The voice commanded me to leave. I kept walking. After 30 seconds, every faucet in the house turned on, the showers roared to life, and the voice escalated, announcing that police had been notified. It was terrifying and perfect. "Everything's on a backup battery," Leo said proudly. "Even if they cut the main power, the party's just getting started. You can control it all from your phone in San Francisco."
As we packed up, he finally asked, "So who are these guests?" "People who think they can take what isn't theirs," I said quietly. "People who think I won't fight back." He laughed. "Well, they're going to regret that." On Wednesday, Leo was back at my door, buzzing with new ideas. "What if they try to break the cameras? I've got a dummy set that's obvious and a hidden set they'll never find. And I brought projectors." He held up small disc-like devices. "For shadows. They'll glide across the walls. The brain sees patterns even where there aren't any. They'll see ghosts." The cabin, by the time we finished, was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. It looked serene and beautiful from the outside. Inside, it was a coiled trap waiting to be sprung. We even hung a sign by the door, made of brushed aluminum. "Welcome to the smart home of the future. Enter at your own risk." To a casual observer, it was a quirky tech advertisement. For them, it was a promise. Sunday. I sat in my San Francisco study at exactly 2 p.m. 3 monitors glowed before me, each showing a live feed from a different camera at the cabin. The lake was calm, beautiful, a perfect, deceptive postcard. My phone, with the control app open, lay next to my keyboard. Everything was armed, everything was ready. At 2:28 p.m., right on schedule, Chloe was always punctual, a trait she did inherit from me, a dark blue minivan appeared on the driveway. The show was about to begin.
Chloe jumped out first, stretching with the air of a conquering hero. Brandon followed, then Frank and Linda, Brandon's parents. They looked tired, worn out, but their faces were lit with a triumphant gleam. Linda was even holding a pair of house slippers. They weren't visiting, they were moving in. They saw the sign. Linda scoffed, ripped it off the wall, and threw it onto the gravel. "I won't have this nonsense in our new home." "Good for you, Mom," Chloe said. "This is your house now." I watched, my finger hovering over the activation button as they used a copied key to unlock my door and step inside. I heard Linda's gasp of delight through the microphone. "It's beautiful! And to think it was so easy." "Some people just don't know how to hold on to their things," she added. I gave them time. I let them unpack a few boxes, let them choose bedrooms, let them start to believe they had won. Let them feel safe. At 10 p.m., through the bedroom camera, I saw Chloe and Brandon were in bed. The lights were off. Frank and Linda were settled in the guest room. It was time.
I pressed activate. The change was instantaneous. The house came alive like a waking beast. Lights in every room exploded into a frantic, chaotic strobe, red, white, blue, green. From every speaker, the robotic voice boomed, "Alert! Unauthorized occupancy detected. You are not the owners. Vacate the premises immediately." On the camera, Chloe shot up in bed, her face a mask of confusion and terror. Brandon cursed, scrambling out after her. In the guest room, Linda shrieked. The shadow projectors kicked in, casting looming human-like shapes that slid across the walls. From hidden speakers came a cacophony of whispers, footsteps on non-existent stairs, the faint sound of a woman sobbing. Defensive protocols engaged. Data stream to local authorities initiated. The more they panicked, the more they ran, the more sensors they triggered. The house grew angrier. Faucets gushed, showers roared, lights flashed faster. The voice grew louder. Chloe was in the hallway now, disheveled and lost. "This isn't possible. Houses don't do this." Brandon was yelling about the circuit breaker, but of course it did nothing. The system was running on Leo's hidden battery array.
Linda was sobbing in a corner, surrounded by flickering shadows. "It's haunted. This isn't a house, it's hell." They tried the front door. Leo had programmed a 30-second delay on the electronic lock. For 30 endless seconds, they pulled and clawed up the handle, truly believing they were trapped in a nightmare of my design. I watched, sipping a scotch, as these 4 entitled invaders, who days ago had coldly evicted me, were systematically broken down by pure, unemotional technology. Their arrogance had been replaced by primal fear. After 6 hours, the system, on a timer, shut down. The door unlocked. They stumbled out into the dawnlight like survivors of a shipwreck, pale, shaking, and utterly broken. The phone rang at 7:30 a.m. I answered with a calm, cheerful, "Good morning, sweetheart. How was your first night at the lake?" "What did you do?" she screamed, her voice raw and trembling. "You sick, psychotic bastard! Linda is hysterical. Frank almost had a heart attack." "It sounds awful," I said, layering my voice with sincere concern. "Did you call someone?" "They called the police. They came, they looked around, and they found nothing. They said it was probably a system glitch." "Well, thank God," I said, pouring every ounce of faux relief into my words. "It's good it was just a technical issue." "A technical issue?" she shrieked, now on the verge of hyperventilating. "We didn't sleep for 8 hours. This was you. You sat there and pushed buttons like a madman."
"Chloe, listen to yourself," I said, switching to a gentle paternal tone. "You're exhausted. It's stress. Collective psychogenic reactions happen in high-stress situations, even hallucinations." The sound she made was half sob, half growl of pure frustration. "We are never going back there. Never. That cabin is cursed. You can have it." "I think that's wise," I replied evenly. "Sometimes a house senses when its boundaries are violated." There was a long, seething silence. Then her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "I know it was you, and I will prove it." "Really?" I asked softly. "How? You'd told the police the house was haunted, and they told you you were wrong." "Chloe, I still get confused by the TV remote. How would I remotely control a complex system from San Francisco?" She had no answer, only ragged, furious breathing. "So, I truly hope you all aren't too traumatized. That would be a shame. We're not going anywhere near that place again. I think that's a reasonable decision. Sometimes a house just doesn't welcome strangers." "This isn't over," she spat. "It might be," I said. "You got what you wanted, a night in my house. I hope it was educational." The line went dead.
On Monday, a locksmith's truck arrived. I watched through the cameras as a confused man tried and failed to deal with the high-tech locks and security system. "This is specialized stuff," he told a frustrated Brandon. "You need the programmer who set it up." The only programmer who knew the system was Leo, and he had no reason to help the people who tried to destroy his neighbor. That evening, as I knew they would, Chloe and Brandon showed up at my penthouse. They had the look of every failed negotiator I'd ever faced, defeated, but trying to bluff. "Open up, we need to talk," Chloe yelled through the intercom. I opened the door, calm and composed. "Good evening. What can I do for you?" "Stop pretending," she stormed in. "Your high-tech booby trap. The locksmith can't get in because you turned the cabin into a fortress." "Security systems are standard," I said, "especially when there have been attempted break-ins." Brandon tried to use his size, stepping closer. "Listen, old man. You stop this circus and sign the cabin over to us, or you can forget you ever had a daughter." "Is that a threat or a promise?" I asked, not moving an inch. "We'll sue," she screeched, "for emotional distress, for endangerment." "On what grounds?" I asked, taking a step back. "The police found no malfunctions. There's a report." "You have what? Hurt feelings?" Brandon switched tactics. "Robert, be reasonable. You're alone. It's a big house. We're a family. What do you need it for?" The same tired manipulation. "It's an interesting approach from people who didn't even ask permission before unloading their luggage." Chloe's composure finally shattered. "Fine, have it your way, but know this, you will never see your grandchildren. You will die alone, just like Mom, with nobody who cares." Once, those words would have eviscerated me. Today, I looked at her as if she were a particularly unimpressive junior executive.
"It's fascinating," I said quietly, "how you forgot to ask me before you tried to steal my home. But you're right about one thing. This is over." They left, slamming my door. The war was won. But the final legal move was still to be played. On Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into the office of my notary, an impeccably dressed, unflappable woman named Sophia Reed. A few minutes later, they arrived. Chloe, face sharp and furious, Brandon, trying to look confident, Frank and Linda, looking small and lost, their earlier arrogance completely gone. "Well, Dad," Chloe started, not even sitting down, "we're here to finally settle this. We're not leaving until you sign."
"I agree," I said calmly. "It's time to close this matter. Sophia?" My notary opened a leather-bound folder. "Mr. O'Connell has executed a transfer of ownership of the Lake Tahoe property to the Fresh Start Foundation, a registered nonprofit that provides transitional housing for victims of domestic violence. The transfer was registered and finalized on Monday. The transaction is legally complete." The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "What?" Chloe whispered, her face draining of color. "The cabin is no longer mine," I said, my voice level. "It belongs to the foundation. It's done. Irreversible." "That's illegal!" Brandon blustered. "We had an agreement." "You had an agreement with yourselves. Unilateral agreements hold no legal weight." Chloe shot up, her chair screeching back. "You had no right! This is petty revenge!" "No," I said, looking directly at her. "This is justice for trying to throw me out of my own home." Linda finally spoke, her voice small and broken. But where will we go? We sold our condo. We thought, back to where you came from, or wherever you were planning to send me."
Chloe was gripping the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. "You chose that foundation on purpose, so we'd get nothing. But you still get to use it, don't you, you selfish—" Sophia interrupted. "The deed includes a clause, a life estate. Mr. O'Connell retains the right to live and use the property for the rest of his life. Upon his passing, full and irrevocable ownership passes to the foundation. Disinheritance is explicit." Brandon paled. "So, we get nothing?" "Precisely," Sophia said. "You attempted to gain property through pressure and threats. You now have nothing to show for it." Chloe sank back into her chair, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. When did you do this?" "Monday morning, right after your technical glitch. Everything you said to me on Monday and Tuesday, it was already meaningless." The dawning horror on their faces was the final, silent victory. They had been defeated before they even knew the battle had begun. As they shuffled toward the door, broken and silent, I spoke one last time. "Chloe?"
She turned, her eyes hollow. "The next time you try to manipulate someone," I said, "remember that an experienced CEO is 100 times more dangerous than a hurt relative." The door closed behind them with a soft, final click. I drove back to Tahoe the next day. The first morning in 3 years I woke up without a knot of anxiety in my chest. The air was clean. The lake was calm. I unlocked the door. My key still worked, and it always would.
and walked through the silent, empty rooms. I spent the next few hours carefully, methodically, taking it all down. Every camera, every sensor, every speaker. I packed it all into boxes. I would give it to Leo. He'd earned it. The war was over. The technology was no longer needed. I was reclaiming not just the space, but its soul. I made coffee the way I had 1,000 times before and took it out onto the deck. The water, the trees, the gentle lap of waves against the shore. And for the first time since Eleanor died, I just sat. I didn't plan. I didn't analyze. I didn't calculate risks. I just was. I realized I'd mistaken a fear of being alone for love. But being alone is infinitely better than being surrounded by lies and manipulation disguised as family. The cabin now belongs to a foundation. I have it for my life. After I'm gone, it will become a sanctuary for people who have nothing, who will be truly grateful for its shelter. People who would never try to throw someone out of their own home.
My phone has been silent for days. Not a word from Chloe or Brandon. I think they finally understand. But more importantly, I understand. I am not the man I was 3 years ago. I thought being alone would break me. Now I know it made me strong. I didn't just protect my property. I reclaimed my self-respect. Eleanor would be proud. Maybe not of the techno-haunted house revenge, but that I finally stopped letting people wipe their feet on me. The wind off the lake brought the scent of pine. Birds chattered in the trees. And I understood, for the first time in a long time, that I was no longer waiting or fearing or retreating. I was just a man sitting on his deck with a cup of coffee. And for now, that was more than enough. If you believe that standing up for yourself is the highest form of self-respect, let me know in the comments what you thought of this story. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? Share your stories below. And if you want to see more tales of justice served right, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.